Democrats have suffered another loss in court, this time to Elon Musk and DOGE. Also, Pam Bondi speaks out about why charges should be dropped for Mayor Eric Adams, and the media has continued to lose it over RFK. We're going to get to all of this in this video, but let's start with what the judge had to say about DOGE.
You know, a federal judge just handed Elon Musk's DOGE a win ruling, and he can now access data to 3 government agencies. What more can you tell us about that? Because that is a hot topic this week.
Yeah, that's right. There was an attempt by some groups to essentially block Elon Musk from gaining access to sensitive information from some of these agencies, including the Consumer Financial Protection Board and the Department of Labor. A federal judge, though, ultimately handing down a decision that says that Elon Musk can get access to that information. Laura, this is just underscoring the power and influence that Elon Musk has in Washington. You're seeing a picture on your screen right there. He was in the Oval Office beside President Trump at the White House earlier this week. He's leading that Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which has become a key priority for the Trump administration. So I expect we're going to be seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more from Elon Musk as these efforts continue to get underway.
All right, so now we're continuing to see the outcome of these lawsuits and how they are not on the side of Democrats because all they can do is sue the Trump administration at this point. But on what basis? I mean, what President Trump is doing through executive order and the power vested within, he has the ability to order Elon Musk to go into these agencies and audit them. And all Democrats can do is, cry and scream that he has access to sensitive information. And you guys have heard me say this so many times. The man has a top secret clearance. So this is a huge win for DOGE and a huge loss for the Democrats. Now, let's hear another troubling revelation for that party, where the Judge Chutkan, who we know President Trump does not like, and she was involved in the Jack Smith case, here she is expressing her skepticism on the lawsuits as well.
14 states' attorneys general have hit a roadblock in their efforts to stop Elon Musk and DOGE. The attorneys general argued that Trump violated the appointments clause of the Constitution by creating DOGE, an unofficial government agency without congressional approval, and by granting Musk sweeping powers without seeking the advice and consent of the Senate. But federal judge Tanya Chutkan didn't seem convinced that the states showed enough evidence of imminent harm. At one point, Chutkan told a lawyer from the Maryland Attorney General's office, quote, "You're essentially asking me to shut down the government." The lawyer replied, "We're asking you to shut down a constitutional violation that we haven't seen in this country."
Yeah, so this reminds me of the Democrats and how they handle free speech, right? They say, no, we love free speech. We respect free speech. But hey, don't say that. That's misinformation. Hey, don't allow that to be on your social media platform. That's misinformation, right? I mean, their problem is they're a walking contradiction, okay? They don't want Trump, Elon Musk, and DOGE to audit the federal government, but they want a democracy. They want the government to work for the people, but they want to shut the government down. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And you know who else sees it this way? Swing voters out of the state of Arizona. The American people are not stupid, okay? They see what's going on here. But the Democrats don't want to accept that reality. Now, here's Fox News, the TV show The Five, talking about what these swing voters had to say about DOGE.
We're seeing polling in Arizona from swing state people. Kennedy, they want them to keep going. They say keep cutting. They love it.
And it was actually a very interesting polling group because it was people who had voted for Biden in 2020 who then switched their votes to Trump in 2024 because Bidenomics, as was the case for most people in the country, it didn't work out for them. So it didn't work out for them because their taxes are too high, eggs are too expensive, people still are having a hard time making mortgage payments and paying the rent and affording college and everything else. So now they're realizing where that hard-earned tax money is actually going. And the more we hear about $160 million going to a Canadian electric school bus factory that has now declared bankruptcy and never made good on their promise to deliver school buses, 100 million of them, to 55 school districts in the country, it's like, that's where my money has gone. They actually want more of it because the feeling is if you cut out entire departments and if you shed sunlight on all of this waste and abuse, then maybe taxes will finally come down.
Yeah, but that's not how these blue states, their attorney generals, are seeing all of this. They see it as a threat. They see it as a harm on the citizens or the people who live in their state, that Elon Musk having access to this information will damage our democracy. And of course, we know that is all premature because what laws have really been broken at this point? Has Elon Musk or DOGE or President Trump violated the Constitution? No, they haven't. So what they're really doing is wasting the court's time.
Let's read what Judge Chutkan said, because it is. She seemed to express a lot of skepticism yesterday, and this is reporting from yesterday. Judge Chutkan repeatedly questioned what imminent harm the states were facing from Musk and DOGE's work that would warrant an incredibly broad temporary restraining order. She also said that plaintiffs' use of words like perhaps and may when describing how states could be harmed by DOGE's actions undercut their argument that irreversible harm was imminent. You're saying I should tell DOGE and their officials to stop what they're doing because we don't know what they're doing, she said. And this is from Daniel Barnes of NBC News.
Essentially, we're not in a constitutional crisis because I know that's what the Democrats want everybody to believe. This judge is clearly stating that you guys are getting ahead of yourself. You're asking me to do something that technically you shouldn't even be asking me to do. And the other thing here is, what laws have they broken? I just said it, right? You can't really identify one. All this really is, well, we believe they will. Well, that's not going to work, of course. Now, let's go back to that whole constitutional crisis buzzword, because when you have Jon Stewart having to fact check you about that term, yeah, you know you guys have gone off a cliff.
We're in a constitutional crisis, and we very well may be. I'm not trying to downplay that reality. When you have a president, which seems to be what's happening, and an administration who are defying a court order, that is ignoring the one branch of government, that is technically, I think as lawyers would define it, a constitutional crisis.
Right. Well, then through an appeal
There could be.
We're a little bit down the road, but yes.
A road to a constitutional crisis.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay.
That's what a press secretary does.
The
See?
road to constitutional crisis. Boy, if that's not a title of a Rachel Maddow special, I don't know what is.
Well, there may be.
Yeah, so that is just sad that he has to correct her on that, given that she was a White House press secretary, and she obviously has her own show. But here's what's really damaging to them and their whole mindset, and why this is actually great news for people like you and me. The more the Democrats continue to double down on hyperbolic language, how they continue to choose extreme language in everything that they're reacting to, what they're doing is programming their base to clearly live in fear. But they're alienating the people in the center who clearly have the biggest impact on the elections, right? The swing voters. So they're not speaking their language. They're not relating to them. And we would love for them to keep doing this. Please don't change. Keep speaking this way, because that means that we will continue to win. And when I say we, I'm talking about common sense. Now, let's just hear how demoralized they are at this point.
General, this reminds me so much of situations in which you bring concern, evidence, facts to an argument, to a case, and folks say, well, essentially, we got to wait till something bad happens before we do something, which is why I think a lot of folks out here are beginning to express, as our friend Elie Mystal we were talking about before, that the courts are not going to save us in this. That, with all due respect to the lawsuits, and that's great, continue suing. At the end of the day, you're going to have judges who are going to parse, and they're going to, piecemeal. They're going to approach this from a appropriate judicial constitutional perspective. But do you get the sense that, and I know you're in a tough position when I ask this question, do you get the sense that, they don't get that this is, the house is on fire? It may not be burning in the room you're in, but the back porch is on fire.
All right, so what I see here is an individual who is having a hard time accepting that DOGE hasn't broken the law yet. And he's just hoping that they would, so that they can actually have a legitimate case to bring to the courts. If someone doesn't break the law, why are you wasting the court's time? That's what's happening here. Now, to improve my point even more about how pathetic they are, this takes us to the next story. which is this entire corruption case with Mayor Eric Adams and how they're trying to tie it to Trump. And even in the headlines, they're saying, yes, Trump ordered quid pro quo. Now, here is what Pam Bondi had to say, where she defended the decision to drop the charges against the mayor.
But listen, we have a right to protect the weaponization, against weaponization in New York and every state in this country, and also national security. What did Eric Adams announce today? That he's going to open Rikers Island for these illegal immigrants. When did they go after him? When he started criticizing the Biden administration. He criticized them for all of their immigration practices. New Yorkers aren't safe, and Eric Adams is going to keep New York safe. You know, they took away his security clearance, which he's about to get back so he can help keep New York safe. Whether Kathy Hochul's going to enforce it, the mayor of New York will enforce it.
So at this point, though, the case has not been dropped, actually, because of this pushback. What happens in that?
Yeah, Martha, I'm on a different time zone, but it's my understanding it is being dismissed today.
Now, as she stated, she claimed that the charges would be dropped. They were not dropped yet. In fact, it is being reported that they will be going in front of a judge to hear both sides, and then the judge will make a determination if the charges can be dropped or not. Now, speaking of a judge, here is a former district court judge who had an interesting take about all of this.
So, Judge Shedlin, I'm looking forward to hearing your insight here, given the role that you used to play as a judge, potentially overseeing something like this. How do you see Judge Dale Ho viewing this dismissal motion, considering the quid pro quo allegation in this case?
I think he's going to listen pretty hard to both sides, and he's going to have a lot of questions for everyone. I don't think he's simply going to rubber stamp this. I agree with Jennifer that it's going to be a pretty searching inquiry, because in her letter, Danielle Sassoon, she pointed out that it has to be in the public interest. And if it's not in the public interest, it shouldn't be dismissed. So he can question them and say, why is this in the public interest? Or why isn't it in the public interest to let this go right now?
Now, in regards to public interest, it's very clear. If you live in New York City, you want the illegal aliens out. You want the criminals out. You want to stop seeing people burned on the subway. There's no question about that. And Mayor Eric Adams, without the corruption charges, was already in trouble because of how much crime had skyrocketed and clearly the illegal migration crisis. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of public interest out there to have him actually do his job. And if he can't do his job because you guys will indict him and try to put him in prison, then you should just go ahead and remove him from office, okay? Let's not keep him 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Now, I believe that's a common sense perspective on all this, but not the fake Reverend Al Sharpton. He believes it's President Trump who is the mayor of New York City.
But to your point, how do New Yorkers live in a city not run by its elected leader? You said and AOC says Adams must be removed. The city cannot sustain being governed for nearly a year by a mayor who's being coerced. I mean, who's running the city right now?
I think that's what the judge is going to have to answer, because right now, from the statement given to the court about why they want to drop these charges, Donald Trump's running the city right now. He's got to be available to work with the president. That's a quote on immigration. So the mayor at this point is Donald Trump.
Okay, so obviously we know that is not true whatsoever. President Trump is not the mayor of New York City, never will be. But what's worse than that is what CNN is up to. Now, what they're trying to do is prove that there is a quid pro quo just based on the interview with Tom Homan and Eric Adams on Fox and Friends that occurred yesterday. Watch this.
I wanted to play what Tom Homan said today with his appearance on Mayor Adams on Fox. Here he is.
If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City, and we won't be sitting on the couch. I'll be in his office, up his butt, saying, where the hell is the agreement we came to?
What is he saying there? Where the hell is the agreement we came to? If he doesn't come through, I'll be back in New York City?
Yeah, so he's basically, this is the quid pro quo. It seems like this is the implicit threat. If you don't come through and you're part of the agreement, I'm coming back to claim what we have, which is that we have submitted to the court that the case is still strong And we're asking the court to dismiss it, but not to throw it completely away. It's still hanging out there.
So we can hang it like a sword.
Absolutely. So the concern is that it's not just weaponization to drop the case, it's actually weaponization to keep the case hovering above the mayor's head.
So he can continue to do what they want. It's an incredible moment that we are in. Thank you very much, Ryan.
And it doesn't take much. That's how CNN operates. You know, they take the clip, they turn that clip into a story that has nothing to do with the actual clip itself, but it sounds good. And if you're not willing to do your research and you're not willing to actually watch the context within that clip, like that full interview, which clearly Tom Homan was not threatening him. It was coming on the back of the question that, hey, are you serious, Mayor Eric Adams, with working with Tom Homan? How do we know it's actually going to work between you two, et cetera, et cetera? But again, CNN, they're not going to play you that. And this also applies to what they refuse to tell us about Big Pharma and how much it's been killing American citizens, which is why they're continuing to run these hit pieces on RFK, even though he's been confirmed and sworn in as the next secretary. And to give you an example of what type of rhetoric they're still continuing to push, which we will debunk here shortly, let's take a look at this clip from CNN this morning.
So he is the worst person for what is, I think, a really good and important message. And listen, I was at Fox for all of those conversations. I was there. I was doing it. I was saying, stop Bloomberg and Obama with the food police. I got that. I got that resistance. Problem is, he is not the best advocate for science.
So he's essentially going to make us healthier, and then we're going to die from whooping cough because of
exactly.
It's like
measles.
Healthy but dead. I think this again. It's the same thing we've just been talking about. A grain of truth. We don't want war. A grain of truth. Kids, especially poor kids, shouldn't have to eat crappy cheese and things full of chemicals.
Food,
It doesn't really matter because that industrial complex is going to push back against him no matter what.
All right. So what they're failing to understand time and time again is that the reason why American people do not trust the government or are now questioning vaccines is because there hasn't been any transparency. And the moment they start taking responsibility for that, they'll start to understand why people don't trust the government.
I think that RFK Jr. is here because the public has lost confidence in public health as a result of the pandemic, when things were obscured from the public, where things were oversold, like the vaccine, which, as you know, I'm a believer in vaccines, big believer, but the vaccine was oversold. The issue of vaccine injury from it was undersold. I think there was a lot of obfuscation, and the public is reacting, of course, by electing President Trump and now by bringing in a reformer. And this reformer is saying a lot of things, Harris. First of all, he's saying, what are we eating? What's in our diet? Why aren't we exercising? Why are 44% of American adults obese? And more importantly, 20% of our children. And does that lead to chronic disease? He's been getting pushback on that. It does lead to chronic disease. I'm here to tell you the diseases I treat in the office are due to what we are doing in terms of what we put in our bodies and the way we are. So the idea, and then looking at the environment, the Make America Healthy Again Commission is going to look at what's in our environment, the microplastics, the ultra-processed foods, the food dyes.
And this will be an issue that the Democrats will lose on as well because of the way they're continuing to talk about it. They're not actually talking about the issue that parents really care about. They're talking about RFK. Just like President Trump and Elon Musk. Democrats are talking about Trump, they're talking about Elon Musk, but they're not talking about the fraud. And the average American out there, they're going to see right through that. And again, I'm not complaining here. Please just keep doing that. We want to continue to win here. So guys, trust me, I love all this. Now, speaking of President Trump and Elon Musk, they did an interview with Sean Hannity. It airs on Tuesday. They have released one clip of this interview so far. And I love it because it's about what the media it continues to fail at, which is to sow division between these two men. Watch.
They have many different things of hatred. Actually, Elon called me. He said, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. They said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, It's just so obvious. They're so bad at it. I used to think they were good at it. They're actually bad at it, because if they were good at it, I'd never be president. Because I think nobody in history has ever gotten more bad publicity than me. I could do the greatest things I get 98% bad publicity. I could do, outside of you and a few of your very good friends, it's like the craziest thing. But you know what I have learned, Elon? The people are smart. They get it.
Yeah, they do, actually.
They get it. They really see what's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, of course they get it because it's common sense. And that's the age that we find ourselves in today. We're getting back to common sense policies, including Democrats who are calling for Elon Musk's contracts with the federal government to be canceled because they believe there's a conflict of interest.
I will tell you, just as a broader political matter, I do think the American people are giving this administration pretty wide latitude to shrink the size of the federal government, and doing so with probationary employees, meaning they haven't been there that long at all, strikes me as one good way to go about it, even if you occasionally trip into some mistake, like perhaps, I'm not saying they did, but perhaps they did on this particular agency.
There's plenty of places to trim the fat in government, and I would certainly start with, maybe the $8 billion that Elon Musk gets from contracts with the federal government.
Well, number one, if I could just go back to something Naira said, before you start cutting all of Elon Musk's ties to the federal government, understand that we've asked him to rescue our 2 astronauts in outer space. So maybe don't take a meat axe to Elon's engagement with the feds until we get our astronauts home. Number one. Number two, the reason that they're moving fast is because momentum begets momentum. Trump created tremendous political momentum for this kind of change by winning the national popular vote and a real mandate in the Electoral College. He extended the momentum by having a really good transition. And of course, his first 3+ weeks in office, he's continued that.
So my question is, where was that energy for George Soros, or the energy for people who serve in Congress who are on the board of directors on some of these companies who have contracts with the federal government? What about that? I mean, this is why it's so childish when Democrats speak this way. Like Elon Musk is this huge conflict of interest only because he's the richest person in the world. Why wouldn't we use someone who's that level of genius and that level of success to help us fix what's wrong with the federal government? I would think it's worth trying, but they've been trying to tear him down every single step of the way. And again, this is something they will lose on, and we want them to lose because when they lose, that means we win, and that means most of Americans will win because it's all based around common sense. Okay, now this last story for you here is really entertaining, okay, because this just shows you how impactful DOGE has been. Now, in the Washington, D.C. area, it is being reported that since DOGE began discussing mass layoffs, the median home price in Washington, D.C. has fallen by $139,000 in 30 days. Nearly 4,000 homes have been listed for sale in and around Washington, D.C. Well, what's happening is liberals are fleeing. And of course, as pointed out by Amuse, it's less of a market shift and more of a mass evacuation, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. And here's a photo of it. You guys can go on Zillow and look this up yourself. All of the new listings, it's quite fascinating. It just shows you that for so long, the housing market around Washington, D.C. has always been intact, right? Been very solid and strong. And now this is clearly a disruption in that. Will they be able to sell all their homes? I don't believe so. Now, the other point that I find to be fascinating is that a lot of these new listings are definitely $1 million or more in value. And what that is suggesting, according to this user on X, is that these are high profile jobs that are exiting this area. And of course, you have to think about the commercial real estate in Washington as well, because we know that DOGE announced to eliminate up to 2/3 of U.S. government office buildings. And of course, not even a single major U.S. government agency is currently occupying even 50% of their office space. So what happens with that whole market as well? And this is just a developing story because it's showing you how impactful DOGE is and how it's going to affect maybe other industries out there in the DC area. All right, so let's get your guys' answers in the comment section below to this question. What's your reaction to Judge Chutkan? Now, we know she doesn't like President Trump. We know President Trump really isn't a fan of her either. She was the judge that was presiding over that whole Jack Smith case in regards to January 6th. So what do you think about her actually expressing skepticism in regards to Democrats believing that what DOGE is doing should be shut down because it's harmful to American citizens? I'm interested to hear your take in the comment section below. Now, one thing that actually caught people's attention yesterday, actually on the world stage, was Vice President J.D. Vance. He actually attended the security conference in Munich, Germany. And he pretty much called out European leaders to their face because we know they don't really believe in free speech and they are not a great example of democracy no longer. Now, if you missed out on some of the statements that he made and the reactions that came with it, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.